There you go.
And we're recording now. Eric, you can go ahead and get started.
All right, cool. So again, feel free to unmute yourself and comment whenever you guys want. All right, so I'm just gonna start this off very basically, just how to create like a notch, like a bottom invert notch using an existing fab, right? Some of you it might bore you because you already do it this way or not, but hopefully you'll pick up something along the way. So we have this condition where we have a new sill, right? This is from Santana West, and then I know I have a unit where it comes down to this, and I have this deadload notch that hasn't been created. So using the nomenclature that Pedro did, we know that the way we name our fab templates are usually is usually starting off with the number. So we would measure the height of the notch. In this case, is 1 11/16, rounded up to the nearest 3 digits. So it'll be 169. The N stands for just a notch at the sill, clearing this little gasket here. It's relatively new. And then the D just stands for dead load. Okay. So you see here, it's a blank canvas. All right. And then I looked into the server or the job itself. I already have one that's similar, right? It's a 144ND. It's the same thing. So N stands for notch at the bottom for the sill. So I definitely can copy that over. I can copy the gasket over. And then the only thing that I really have to edit is just the notch at the bottom. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy everything. So already that gives us a very good base to work off of. So now we know that, again, going off of the nomenclature, how we name our fab tickets, and it says right here, the deadload notch is a 1 7/16 notch. So I need it to be 1 11/16. So I would need it to shift a 1/4 inch up. So what I would do is I would insert the notch. So normally you can maybe shift these up by a 1/4 inch. But if you shift it up by a 1/4 inch, you'll get this little key notch here, which is not shown on the detail. You don't really need it for deadload notches. So what I like to usually do is go in ISO mode, ISO view, and then go into these faces right here that I know I need to pull up. So I'll control left click to the face that I need to pull, control left click. Right. So you can kind of see where it's highlighted, right? And you can grab these grips right here and then it'll shift it up. It's the same command as if you were to use the press and pull command. So once that's done, you notch it. Okay. Just copy, just to keep it consistent, you want it to just copy the description and just change it accordingly. Okay. So once that's done, you will go into edit note, which is all your paper space note. Go in here, explode it. And that's very important. You have to, and the reason why we do this is to keep the dimension style very consistent between all the fabs. Doesn't matter what kind of notch you have, like how we dimension will be the same. So this offers a good baseline. Just explode it from this notch right here. And then what you can do is you just go ahead and delete the old one. You don't need it anymore. And then just edit accordingly. Instead. Okay. So that's how would I create a new notch at the bottom of it. And it's very important when you borrow the dimension from another notch. You can't just copy the block in there and then save it and call it a day, because the program doesn't like it when you have a block within a block. So every time you do an edit note, right, and you do any like type of edit right here, and you save it into this, tie it with this notch, it becomes a block. So if you paste in a block within a block, it's going to screw up the fab. Doesn't like it. So it's going to cause a lot of errors and crashes. Takes care of that. Okay. Next one. Question, comments? I see you unmuting, Pedro.
I was just gonna say, you just exactly did what I do. Sometimes when you get into a rhythm and you know you need the win load and dead load for a certain cell, it's like you just do it back to back. So you make like 2-3 fabs for this 5691 back to back, and then you go to the 5692 and boom, 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 just how you did it.
Mm-hmm. So it makes it a lot easier, and then we kind of learn from each other too, right? Like you know, I probably picked this up just talking to Pedro or Chris or anyone like that. Like, oh, we can do it this way, we can do it that way. I remember when we first introduced this type of notching, I was talking to I think Chris about it, and then I was saying, oh, what happens if we just explode it? You know, and then I think we're thinking like, oh, we don't really know what's going to happen. I even talked to Zach. He's like, oh, I don't know if that works. So we just did it anyways, and then it works, and it's been working, so it works fine until otherwise.
Yeah, just I think we found out also about deleting an existing notch while you're still in that edit mode. Like we were always saving and then going back and deleting. So saved us a few clicks, right? But in the long run, it saves us a lot of time. It's like you're already in that mode, but deleting an extra notch doesn't affect you or doesn't make your AutoCAD crash. I think that's one of the big things we've been working with and around. It's like, hey, you know when your AutoCAD is going to crash, so let's avoid that. So if you know doing certain patterns or processes back to back will make your AutoCAD crash, let's not do it. Try to find a different way so that your CAD won't crash. I think that's the ultimate goal, right?
Yeah, because I used to copy from other like blocks, like the dimensions, and just copy it as a block, paste it in, and then explode it. And then I kind of just stumbled across like, oh, what if I paste it in here, then explode it, right? Instead of moving things individually. So cool. Glad to know that it's, you know, the method is transparent to everyone else, or at least one person. Okay, so the next one, how to create like how I like to work on horizontal fabs, especially head fabs, like my process in doing it. Especially if you have a new part like this one, it's a W75 3211. So it's very similar to the 3153. The only difference is really just the height of the chicken head. So back then we can't really copy notches between, you know, between different parts. But maybe within the last 2-3 years, Zach made it so that you can copy between parts. But it doesn't make the notch. You still have to do some type of work on it. So I'll show in a bit. And what I like to usually do is just work on one side first. Okay. So this one already has all the gasket. I cheated a little bit. I didn't want to, you know, bore you guys with making all that stuff. So you see how after I paste the notch in here, it doesn't actually create the notch. But what it does is actually puts in all the necessary items that I need to create that notch. So I had to go in here. You can see that it's not really where I want it. Remember, this one represents the notch that to notch it to be allowed to stop at daylight, and then the top kind of covers over the vertical. So we want that actually just the top right here, right? So you want to shift those. So just measure that. I'm doing something that the Grandmaster Romy has taught all of us. So first I pick the side, you notch this one, which is the one that allows it to cap over the jam. And then you notch the one for the bayonet. Again, flip back to the one you referenced to. Keep a level of consistency. Don't retype things as much as you can. That one. is the bayonet. Here, click out of it so it saves. This one is the for the jam. Go to edit note. Now in this case, you don't have the luxury to just explode it, right? You're gonna have to pick it one by one. So you have to be careful. So we know that this one ties, let's see, with the notch. You see how this one shifted up, so we're going to move that in a bit. So let's just put that in there first. We don't want the bayonet hatching. Got selected for some reason. Check your dimensions for inconsistencies, because I know that it's shifted up top. These dimensions probably shifted as well. There's the notch for the jam. There's the bayonet, same thing. One side's done.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why couldn't you just like grab the block in this paper, in this view right here, like just grab the block, copy it from a
From
corner?
this one, right? And then just paste it over there. I don't know, just the way I work.
Oh.
Again, it's like it's open for comments. Like there's different ways, and a lot of people for us to do like different ways of doing it. Mine may not be the most efficient. It's just what I'm accustomed to.
Oh, because you already explained the. Oh, my bad. I thought you were
No, you're
explaining
good, you're good.
a different way.
But which is what I'm going to bring towards the end, right? I'll touch on that subject a little bit more. How everyone kind of just has their own way of doing it. Yeah. So let me finish the thought for this. So right now, one side's done. We know that it's a source fab. You always want to build source fabs and let the program derive all the combinations for you. So now you want to build the right side of the fab ticket. So you just want to mirror the notches and then go from there. That's it. Cool. Any questions or comments on this one? No? Okay.
Maybe just keep in mind that there is a scale. We for the longest we weren't able to copy notches from one part to a different part. Now we are, but just keep in mind that there is a scale at the top right. Sometimes when the two parts are different scales, the dimensions on one paper space is different on the other paper space. So as long as they're the same scale, you will not have an issue like what was just shown. But if one is a third scale and the other one's a quarter scale, sometimes it's easier to just copy the blocks in 3D and not copy the entire notch, because the dimensions will be a third scale and not a 1/4 inch scale.
Mm-hmm. Or you can copy it in there and just redimension it. Your block is still going to be the same. It still works in the model space, but then your dimensions, you just have to redimension it. You'll see it right there. Like the dimension doesn't even make sense. Like instead of 1 5/8, you'll have it to the 32nd or something like that. So it should be very apparent.
Yeah, yeah, it will be. Just keep in mind.
Good point. Thank you, Pedro. Next one.
Hey, I have a tip on copying objects not the dimensions, but like these picture in paper space. If you scale, like you type in the scale command. If you use, like, if you're copying a picture from a quarter scale template to a third scale, you use the scale formula, which is the target, which is the quarter, to your destination, which is a third. So it'll be 4/3 is your scale factor.
That's a good.
And you said that's for like hatching, not dimensions?
No, like, so like any object other than dimensions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. Cool. Keep that in mind. Next class. All right. Next one up, feature notes versus notches. You may wonder why we need a little talk about this, but there seems to be misconception of when to use feature notes and when to use notches. I've always, asked the new guys to, when you have a feature note is when you use it for holes that are various, right? It's not fixed to one side. It's not fixed as in, like, it's not in the middle of the part. It's not 2 inch from the ends and whatnot. So in this case is a prime example. This happens a lot. Right here we have a channel, and it calls out for a number 7 hole at V groove 24 inch on center. So this varies, right? So it's like you have more than one hole on this part depending on the length. So we get a lot of fabs where it's like it's a notch, and we don't really want to do this. You can say it's preference or whatnot. It doesn't really show it, but at the bin model, you do see this hole, and it's going to look weird. You're going to question it. Someone's going to question it when they inherit the unit. So it's probably better to just use a feature note where it doesn't show any hole. So how you do a feature note is very simple. You just do a drop down from the notch, create fab feature. Now it's going to ask you to do left or right end. In this case, since it kind of runs along the part, you do none. So it's not tied to either end. And then copy the description, edit, and store. That's it. And then just delete the old one. Easy peasy. Any questions on the feature note thing? Because I know there are times where it's questionable. No? Okay. Let's see. Next one. Okay. This one's relatively new. I just want to talk about the kind of like the overview of like derived fabs and then kind of like the power of it. Right now we have a door condition, right? Just envision where this is a door, your side light right here. And then you also have another condition, the door, where you have, comes up and it has an extra transom light above. So in this case, the door side vertical actually has a gasket right here up top. And then the other one doesn't have a gasket up top. So let's talk about the derived fabs first. So how the fabs gets combined is it reads a rule at the bottom and it reads a rule at the top. It triggers a certain rule in the data. We take a look at this. At the very bottom, the male side is reading, you can see it's SIL C119D to Z horizontal. So it's reading this tag and this horizontal. So if you take a look at the data, if you take a look at the male side, invert 138M, the SIL C119D is VAV CDO. So it gives the prep on the bottom as CDO. It just stands for curtain wall, door, outswing. Kind of simplified it recently. And then at the top, it's going to read this Z tag, which I'm going to explain later. Z tag, and it gives us RSG. RSG doesn't have a gasket up top. So if you take a look at this is an issue because I don't have 2020. If you take a look at this fab, if you remember, the bottom is the sill and it's reading the CDO. And then the CDO at the bottom has this prep right here. So if we open up the actual fab template, the source fab template, in order for it to derive, you need 2 source templates, right? So I'm gonna open up the 2 source templates. So the RSG is at the top prep of that vertical. So at the top, you just have the countersink in the front for the W75 5646, which is shown here. Can't see it, but it's basically right there, but on the male side. And also the notching declared to 5646 as well. And then the bottom prep has the 4 holes and then the prep for the outswing door, the notching. And it combines it to this template, CDO at the bottom, combined with an RSG up top to give this template, and then use this template to derive this fab. So normally for doors, we have an ISO right here. So I'm going to show you how I've been building the isometric views. Back then, we would actually have a viewport to show the isometric view, but we found out that every time we release the fab, it's missing the isometric view. Like we forget to put it in. It's not so much that we forget. We think that it's supposed to combine and we should know. But because the way how the derived fab works is that it takes a look at all the notching and the notes that's tied to one side, then it combines it together. So if your viewport, that you can't tie a viewport into a notch or a feature note, it doesn't like that. So the way me and Zach talked about it, he showed me a way to develop the isometric view. It's very manual. So every time you make a change, you're gonna have to do it again. So hopefully this will be the final version of the door. So let's just grab a viewport here as a base. Let's grab this one. So VP to turn it on. Just paste it anywhere. And then you want to unlock it so you can manipulate the view. So you want to stretch it down too. So let's just build a little small border here. Shift this over. So now you have to click into the viewport. Just start with VPI, gives you that little ISO. So now, in case you can see, you can't really see anything here. So what I like to do is just maneuver it around. Sometimes it gets stuck, so I like to actually use the command free orbit and just pan, right? So once you're satisfied with the view, just close out. While still in this viewport, inside this view, you want to run the command solprof, SOL, PROF. I think it's called solid profile or something for short. select the part, enter. I don't really know what these things are for because Zach doesn't even know, doesn't bother telling me. So it creates a block reference, right? So what you do now is you do the run ch space. So it's going to grab whatever you want from model space and bring it into paper space. Now it's pictured out. So what you got to be careful of is you got to go into, after this is you got to go into model space and delete this extra block. So what it does is it projects different lines to show the full scope of the 3D model you're doing. So delete this, we don't need that. So now this is already here. You can go ahead and delete your viewport. You don't need that anymore. See that how some of the lines got deleted because I didn't bring in the other view. We don't really need it. So explode this guy. It's a block. Trim it. Of those. Now you want to do a feature node, okay? Because it's not a notch. So in this feature node, you want it to tie to the bottom because you always want, you know, to tie it to what it's showing, right? So in this case, it's showing the bottom prep. So you want to click to the side where it needs to belong. Just click there. Give a nice description, isometric view. Same thing. That's it. That is how you tie your make your isometric view. Well, let's test it out, right? Let's close this first, save it. You don't need this open. You don't need this as well, but let's delete that and let the program redraw it. So you see that little lag right there? That means it's drawing the new fab template. So let's preview the fab. There you go. Your isometric view is now automatically combined when making the final fab. Okay. Any questions on that one? Any better ideas on that? Because I'm all for it because it's quite a hassle to make those isometric views. Nothing? Okay. The last thing I want to go over is the Z tags. I call it Z tags. I don't know what Zach calls it. Zach find it kind of funny that I call it Z tags. So what Z tags are basically an override rule, right? So every time you'll notice when you're doing a unit, you have all these tags overlapping each other, right? And it's reading rules. So how does it know to read rule? Like how does it know to prioritize which rule, right? So in this case, the door is a very good example of the power of the Z tag. So in this case, it runs up to this door right here, right? So in this set of tags, it has the in horizontal, so invisible horizontal 250, and it also has the Z horizontal 250 DH. So if you take a look at the rules, the way it's set up for the verticals, the male side, which is the door side, has rules for invisible horizontal 250, has the captured horizontal, right? Right. But if you have this condition, you usually have a gasket under to trigger the top, right? So now we're stuck in a pickle where it's like, okay, well, we have two different conditions where sometimes we need it to trigger a certain condition where it doesn't have a gasket up top. So just no gasket in general. So we went ahead and just used the Z horizontal 250D. So what it does is the program takes this in consideration, whatever you put in front, Z, and it goes chronologically backwards. So Z, Y, X, and then so on and so forth. I don't know. I only really use Z. I didn't really see any need to use more. Not yet, at least. So in this case, it's using Z. So if you take a look at this, right? How would this vertical know to tick, either to read the in horizontal or the horizontal 250 DH? But the program already kind of knows it. If you put the Z in front, it takes precedence over anything else, right? So we put that there so that it triggers the gasket, the fab with no gasket there, right? In this case, if you take a look at this one doesn't have it, right? In horizontal 250 comes up. Typically, this will have in the Revit model, it will just be a typical family. So it'll be, just a typical horizontal. So we'll just have in horizontal 250 there. Anything with the door now is going to have a Z tag introduced to it. So when it comes up over here, used over here as a door like this, it's going to bring in the Z tag. If it's used right here instead, it's going to bring in Z tag here, but doesn't trigger anything because your vertical is beyond that. And it's going to hit this intersection first. So it knows to use this this intersection, this rule. So if you take a look at this fab right here, you see how it's the same exact fab, it has the ISO now, and it has also the gasket there. So yeah, that's it. That's an overview of the Z tag. It allows you to be very creative on how you set up your tags. It's actually kind of fun. Any questions on that one? Because that's pretty much the last item I want to go over. Can't really think of anything else. There's the tips.
Are you manually adding that Z tag? How is it getting the Z?
It's placed in there. So the Z tag is, so this is your regular Inviso family, right? And then this is your family with the pocket filler. So it's usually used above the door. So if we have this condition, right, where normally they'll model this family to have the, let's see, this family will have the 002. So it's basically the family above the door. And it's connected to this. So it's going to bring in the Z tag over here. And it's going to intersect this vertical, and it's going to trigger that rule. So the Z tag actually comes in with, oh, I didn't put it in here, but it should come in with this. I'm supposed to put the Z horizontal 250 here. So this out.
Via Z, would it be IN horizontal 250?
I talked to a few Ps with it. Like we can just generalize it. It doesn't really matter if it's a captured or Inviso. So just to kind of save us another rule to generate, right, for the vertical, we just generalize it to be Z horizontal 250 DH or something. That's all. So once it reads this dummy tag, it'll bring it in automatically over here if they model it correctly. And it'll just trigger the rule for this vertical. And then in this case, because this family is just a typical one, it's just going to have the Inviso horizontal tag. So it's only going to trigger that one. And then your Z tags over here doesn't trigger anything because it's beyond that. So.
And you're saying that a Y horizontal would take precedence over a Z horizontal?
I haven't tried. Yeah, I haven't tried it tried it anything beyond Z. I think Chris tried it like maybe with Y before on like maybe NNR or something. Chris,
I did it on one west side.
on one side.
I did Z, Y, X on the same use.
Mhm.
It's for the transition units. So it'll take Z first, and then Y, then X, then all the way up back to A.
Okay.
Yeah, so the way Zach explained it to me a while back was that when you have two taglines at the same intersection point and that other family or the other tagline that's intersecting those two taglines and it has both uses, what it's going to take, it's going to take Z first and run its way down from Z to A. So it will always take Z first before anything else.
Right.
And so since then, we've been calling them Z tags. We thought he had made that rule because of his name, right? Zach with the Z, make it that way, but just to mess with him.
Well,
Though.
he just, I think it's because I call it Z because he introduced it as like, oh yeah, just use the letter Z in front, you're good. You know, and then he explained the Y, X, and chronologically reverse, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm fine with the name Z tag. But yeah, we've been doing that for a while now. We first kind of did it manually when like the one-offs, right? And base stops had different type of adjustment because it comes to a door. We kind of just manually put it in. But then since we kind of know, like we're trying to standardize how we model things and we kind of getting smarter at like more knowledgeable at how Revit is, right? We kind of know how they model it. We can kind of set up the data in a way where it comes in automatically. And I think that's the ultimate goal, right? Is to have everything come in like as much as possible. You have to do minimal work.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, we talked about when we first built the rules is, that order of precedence and how you would decide that. So
yeah,
I didn't know about those tags and I wasn't sure how you were putting them in the, yeah.
It was the best kept secret for 2019.
Yeah, no doubt.
I was like, man, you kept this all along away from us and then we're here struggling. You didn't tell us about this.
Yeah,
but,
exactly. So
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, I know. It's one of the best things I found.
And the reason why it works is because this side of the horizontal is one family and this side is the typical horizontal. So your tagline, your Z tagline, your extra tagline will only run from those two verts, right? Which is something we've kind of found out and tried to figure out how it worked with Matilda. So if you flip this horizontal over and now you have it in a vertical, we came across this instance where this bottom half was captured and this top portion of the vert was invisible. So we were scrambling, hadn't really seen it, played with it, right? So, but it's kind of the same thing, right? All we have to do is make sure that the vert name is the same on this end and the top end, and your tagline will be continuous. So we had to just mess with the names, do profile modifiers to make sure that the name was like Invisovert, even though the top one, the bottom one was like captured, right? But it's kind of interesting how you tie both of those together. I think that's something we've learned. Now I kind of see a little bit on it on El Camino, and I'm like, okay, got to think back to Matilda. There's this area where the doors is all captured, but they only want captured up until the door header, right? They don't want anything above it. So it's invisible. So I think that's something new that we've been coming across, and it's like we kind of understand it now and how it's been working.
Yeah, and it's those complex jobs like Matilda, again, that teaches us these lessons that we can carry on for all the other jobs, right? I was actually going to do profile modifiers for this until I talked to the setup team, and then Chris brought up like, let's try not to do the profile modifiers and dig into it and see how we can use rules to set this up. And then we're like, okay, let's do Z tags then. I mean, that's the only way. So, yeah. That's all I have. Any other questions or stuff that maybe you guys want me to touch on? Like I guess the last thing I want to bring up is that's just my few things that the way I'd like to do things. And I know we have a lot of like PEs here, so there's definitely different styles and methods of doing it. So, I mean, like, and I know we have a lot of training classes that, we're supposed to have every week. So having a class where, if we all come together and just show different tips from each other, I think that would be a nice training session. Because I know Chris has a lot of tips. Like for the life of me, can't use point filters. And I know he's really good at it. So, and then I know Pedro has tips, Ryan has tips. So,
Did you want to show really quick that one regen tip for the that Pab preview ticket?
yeah.
That one.
So what you're saying is, I'm not too adept at it. So
I can share if you want.
Try and fix that 5/8 dimension.
Hmm?
You know how it's off a little bit? You see?
Look at you. All right, you want to share yours then, since we have like 10 minutes?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
A lot of my AP pictures are locked, so let me just, I guess I'll change the hook lug attachment. I was kind of working on this vertical. So a neat tip would be like what you would do in case that this was locked. You go to just a hook lug, and then you just right click, edit note. You can either do it in the paper space or model space. It doesn't really matter. And then I just quickly opened it in my AP folder. So you wouldn't really go in here unless you really need to edit it.
Yep.
It's only because this is locked, but you can just put anything really, just like any change. You can save it, Control S. Then when you go back here, what you would do is like you would probably like click some other AP picture just to like get the, I don't know, establish we're looking at an AP picture, but then when you click on it again, now you have it here. You can see the preview. And then when you do the regen tool, I usually just do RE, and then you have it there. And then it's easier than exiting out here again and then going back into here and then previewing the ticket all over again.
Yeah, and that's a great thing, because I know when Ryan found out this tip, it never really bothered me too much. I just closed it and whatnot, but it bothered the heck out of him. So he found a way to kind of like circumvent that issue and then just figure out this resolution. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that. So cool. Any other questions or anything? That's all I have.
So for some of the earlier things you were showing, like let's say copying notches, from a different profile into the new profile.
Yeah.
Like, have you guys looked at, maybe creating some macros around that? Because it seems like a lot of rote processes with a few inputs. And it seemed like something you could probably build a macro around, where you could sort of just pick this point, do this thing, and then the other stuff comes in on, exploding and all that stuff happens automatically. Have you guys played with that at all?
No, we never did.
It was a feature before. It was a very, very early when Zach made the notch command. You could copy notches between different part numbers. It wasn't, you just change the text in the clipboard, and then you can change it to the part number that you want to, and then paste it in, and it works. But he took it out.
Yeah. So, and I think the reason behind that was for Tony, because each notch, even though maybe it's exactly the same notch, your LDT might have to change depending on the profile it's going on, right? Because the way it has to be clamped, or where the tools have to go, or what they're going around. So we needed the notches to be profile specific. So that was kind of one of the things we overlooked at the beginning, because we were just going to be able to copy those from one thing to the other and then maybe modify them. But we needed them to be a new notch so that Tony would know to make a new LDT. So that was kind of the reason for that. But as I was watching what Eric was doing when he was copying it over, it seemed like a set of steps, something you could probably build a little program around, and you could, make it easy to copy things from one to the other and then make your modifications or that kind of thing,
Yeah, I think if you, because when you copy that notch between one part number to another, it kept the same fluid number, and I think that's what it was having an issue with when it came
Right.
to programming. And so
Right.
instead of keeping that same number, when it detects that you're trying to copy or paste a notch into another part number, it just exactly gives it a new number. I think also it depends on the profile. I think it goes from the very front of the part on the vertical. If that's not in the same location as the original part, it puts the notch in a different spot. I think that's where it goes. I think that's where he bases the location of the notch from not from 0, but it's like a positive number on the vertical. I was trying to look into it to see if I could kind of copy a notch and then bring it in and then move it based on the profile limit, profile size. Like I guess that's the depth of the first number, and then the first part number, and then the depth of the second part number, and then move it accordingly.
Yeah, because I was thinking, maybe it's as easy as just saying, okay, well, here's the origin point of this part, here's the origin point of this part, and then the copy command would sort of, explode it, bring it in, blah, 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 like each of those steps, right? And then maybe you want to edit it, so it leaves it like that for a minute, make your edits, and then you run the rest of the command and it does the other parts, it's like just to save the clicks,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can maybe you can I haven't really looked into it, but maybe you can try to use Action Recorder. I use Action Recorder a lot to make simplified scripts instead of writing them out by hand. I don't know if you guys have been using Action Recorder.
I use it here and there, like very seldomly though. It's just like another cheap way of doing a Lisp, right? Or like a piece or a script.
Yeah, you can use Action Recorder with the custom insert quick blocks. I use that a lot. Stuff that you guys notice that you do repetitively. If you're not that great at writing out scripts manually, just use the Action Recorder. It's really even if it's just a couple of steps, like two commands, and you use it a lot, you can just press a button or give it your own custom name.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of got me thinking too. Like, there probably is a way for me to make the isometric view like step like automated or something like that, or relatively automated, right? Because it's like Steve said, it is a set of steps that I usually do. It's the same step over and over, other than just rotating the view. But
you could definitely automate a lot of that piece too. And the macro recorder is great for things that are just in one file. And then the Lisp stuff's better if you want to do something you're going to go over multiple files. But because the macro recorder, you can't really do it with the B script. But either of those would work good for those things. There's a class I took at AU, it's called Line Lisp, where basically you just use the command feature in Lisp, and then you can do whatever you would normally type at the command line. You can just type those things into the Lisp command and it just does it all. And then there's a pause thing you can add there to pause and pick a point or anything like that too. So there's a couple ways you could go, but you could definitely, just make those more into a routine. Then we have to teach somebody, it's a lot less steps, right?
Yeah.
What if when hitting the right click to copy a notch, right after you select copy, the 3D model shows up and you can select the point, just how when you do control copy, select the point that you want to copy from. And then when you paste it, you can also paste it in that same point, like let's say glass pocket, right? Would that be something that could be possible?
Yeah, or just do the points first. You know, it's like, you know, what's the base point on the origin, what's the base point on the new one, and then the Lisp thing just does the rest, right? Sometimes you pick the points first, sometimes you could do them in process, but I've done it a couple different ways. But it seemed like there was some opportunity there. And again, you know, for you guys, you know, you're doing this all the time. You get used to it. It goes pretty fast. But, you know, for the average user that just watched that, they'd be like, oh my God, there's 50 steps to that thing. So sometimes it's nice to make a little thing that makes it so when you show it to somebody, it's like 3 clicks and they got it, you know. So
You mean they're not going to understand the soap off command?
hey dude, you guys are going old school, man. Point filters and soul prop, like that's release 9 stuff.
Yeah, that's what Zach was telling me when I was sitting in his office. He was like, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to make this isometric view. I just want to project it as a picture so I can tie it to a feature node. He was like, I think I could do this one. And he's like, damn, this is a very, very old command.
Yeah, it's from back in the day when people didn't want 3D, they just wanted the pretty pictures. So.
Yeah, apparently. That was when he was telling me he entered a drafting competition during those days. Apparently. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks, guys. I mean, that's that, and hope you learned something. Like Steve says, a lot of opportunities. So
Good stuff. Thanks.
Great.
Cool,
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.